of the most important processes we have to go through in our journey of conscious evolution and ascension is the embodiment of the divine ascended masculine and the divine ascended feminine creator forces in unity in the self. Now, before I go forward, I do want to remind everyone that even though I'm using terms like masculine and feminine, I am referring to creator forces that are constants in any given reality experience on any level of consciousness or layer of dimensional frequency here. So this really doesn't have anything to do with anatomy, gender, orientation, identity, any of those kinds of things. It's really important to let a lot of those old paradigm limitations and distortions go, all right? Because the assumption of roles and functions based on those kinds of things is actually the result of a large amount of distortions that were actually occurring in a lower vibrational level of consciousness. This is due to the fractalization and isolation process that occurs in lower dimensional expressions or lower reality or lower realm experiences. And it was only furthered by control systems and cultural indoctrinations that ultimately created assumptions as well as scripts from a limited level of consciousness, which of course held these forces in isolation within the self and within the external, which ultimately co-created the distorted lower toxic masculine, distorted lower toxic feminine beingness. And we're moving away from that because as one goes through the conscious evolution process, the ascension process, they will observe that the divine masculine and divine feminine are less and less fractalized as one goes through the dimensional spectrum, right? 40 to 5D, 5D to 60, 60 to 70, and so on and so forth. We have this evolution towards further unity consciousness. As they unify and go up, they are getting closer and closer and closer until they finally unite back at infinite creator source consciousness, right? We talk about source, we talk about the I am all that I am, one is all is one. Going up through that dimensional spectrum ultimately is going to create that unity. So again, it has nothing to do with your anatomy, your orientation, identity, roles, anything along those lines. And as we go through this video, you will find that when I am describing the attributes of the lower and distorted and toxic masculine and feminine and the ascended and divine masculine and feminine, I am not using terminology that makes assumptions of, say, emotionality, right? This one's rational, this one's emotional, this one's passive, this one's assertive. None of that is going to be occurring in this video because we are going to look at them as alchemical processes, and we are going to look at them in a way that helps us understand our own creator state of beingness, because you are already both. Equal parts masculine, equal parts feminine. You are, your spirit, your energy fields are doing that. What qualities are being embodied, what qualities are being expressed and exuded, that depends on where you are in your journey, what is going on with the creation you are working on, what kind of reality experience you are co-creating at this time. We are going to see those creations and those experiences fare and exhibit the qualities of energy that are put into them, not only at their beginning or their conception, but also what is continued to be fed into them and energize them. So we have to make sure that we are mindful of the quality that we are also expressing and presenting here when we go through our own conscious creation process. So in order to familiarize ourselves with these forces, I thought it would be good to talk about them in ways that talk more about how they operate or how their attributes operate and contribute to a given experience versus, again, anthropomorphizing them in an old paradigm kind of way. So It's not the masculine is the active and the feminine is the passive. The masculine projects, the feminine receives. That's not how it actually works. If it's pushing, if it's pulling, if it's giving, if it's receiving, if it's moving, if it's doing anything, it is actually embodying and employing the divine masculine force. So say you're trying to paint a picture. You're trying to make a portrait of something. The divine ascended feminine would be the canvas, the brush, the paint, everything that goes into holding that reality experience and being that reality experience. The act of painting, wetting the brush, applying or mixing the paints, drawing and moving the paint around the canvas, that is the masculine force, okay? We are always both, always doing both at the same time. So let's actually talk about the attributes of the masculine and feminine in their lower toxic distorted expressions and their ascended expansive divine expressions. The distorted lower toxic masculine is a myopic, stagnant, controlling, regressive, spurious force that is blind to others. We talk about the myopia. It's not necessarily to say that this divine force is short-sighted in the way that we think about myopia, but myopic in the sense that the level of consciousness in the distorted lower masculine is too low to be able to perceive beyond its immediate circumstances and its past circumstances. The stagnation, no evolution of consciousness. It's very loop prone. It's very prone to sleepwalking, co-creating the same experience and the same day over and over and over again. Controlling, because loops and scripts control. They isolate, they command, they limit, and they put and impose caps on growth and experience altogether. The control that comes from the toxic, distorted lower masculine also maintains the illusion of separation, fractalization, as well as isolation of the divine ascended masculine force and the divine and the toxic feminine forces. It's regressive. This force will often go backwards into atavism. This force will often undo or uncreate its own progress. It will often pull apart or try to recreate the past or live in the past or to enforce maybe a script or a pattern or a loop on its surroundings, trapping them in a moment in time. There is a spurious element to the toxic, distorted masculine. Fakery, falsehood, the sham, right? The representational self, the faking through life, the creation of artificial selves as an expression to operate, almost like robots, or as costumes throughout one's experience. The toxic, distorted masculine lives through the idea of assignments, of roles. There's a blindness of others. There is a blindness to the ripple effects. There is a blindness to cause and effect as it relates to interactions with the external. And there is, of course, then, with a blindness to others, further dependence on the control, stagnation, and regressive tendencies that are ultimately barring and holding down the toxic, distorted masculine from being able to actually be its own divine self. We talk about the toxic, distorted lower feminine. We have an energy that is exploitative. It is more vampiric. It requires the opportunity to extract energy, resources, to hold on to its own sense of stability. There is a chronic parasitism that is occurring with this kind of engagement. There is a never-ending hunger. It's an obstinate force. Obstinate in the way that there is a lack of willingness or lack of ability to grow and expand, whereas the toxic masculine is stagnant. The obstinate nature of the toxic feminine is almost more like a bad faith response to the opportunity to evolve and grow out of its own toxic state. Volatility. Volatility is not about being just unstable, but it is prone to instability, and it doesn't take much of a catalyst for it. It is a profligate energy. Profligate being wasteful, right? Cannot sustain. It cannot sustain the reality creations it is working on. It does not generate its own energy. It does not generate its own empowerment. Ultimately, as a profligate force, will eventually feed off of and devour its own creations or waste its own creations. There is scarceness here, because if the divine ascended feminine is the force of abundance, then the toxic feminine is the force of lack. It is essentially a neutron star, right? It's pulling everything into that gravitational field and then pulling it apart. The toxic feminine has a blindness of self. There is a blindness to what it is, to what it is doing, to how it operates, to what its true power really is, to what is toxic and what is in its own divine expression. The creations made when these toxic forces are working together within the self or within a collective are discordant, unstable, toxic, and corrosive, so long as those energies remain the source of power for these creations to actually exist, express, and grow. The ascended divine masculine is foresightful. There is the power and ability to not only see what is going to be the potential or the highest trajectory outcome of a given action or a given movement or push for change, but it is also the ability to see not only where a path will go, but what that timeline will culminate as. It is kinetic. It is always in motion. It is always moving. It is always pushing for change and creation and creativity. It is a harmonizing force. So it brings things into harmony. You don't need control when you have harmony. It is integrative, constantly evolving, constantly growing, constantly exchanging energies to not only adapt and expand and of course ascend in its own way, but it is integrative in the sense that it is also able to adopt and take on qualities authentically from new experiences and new vibrations and new creations that are coming into its experience. It is purposive in that everything that is enacted by the divine masculine or in the divine masculine state is understood. There is perfect clarity in the choice and enactment of any given intention that is going on. Everything is done with purpose, again, foresightful, kinetic, harmonizing, integrative, in the highest interest of all concerned. It is not from an external purpose or directive. It is an internally self-empowered connection to its own divine expression that is understanding and, of course, then working in accordance with a divine purpose that is coming from one's own higher levels and higher connection back to infinite creator consciousness. The ascended divine feminine, insightful. The ascended divine feminine knows how everything works and the true nature of all things in whatever expression it is expressing in that moment. Being insightful to be able to understand the mechanics and components that go into creating any given manifestation or any given reality experience. Understanding all of the components that are existing within, expressing from, and what conceived any given creation or manifestation. Abundant with energy, abundant with growth, abundant with territory, abundant with the space and power with which to hold, support, and foster any kind of reality possible. It is a stabilizing force, holding everything in a place where things are able to actually grow and evolve and shift and ascend in a way that is with the most ease and grace possible. It is sustaining, right? This goes right back into that abundance. It is sustaining. It is self-sustaining. It has the power to not only sustain the reality that it is hosting, but it is also able to sustain change. It is able to sustain not only evolution, but also sustain a higher vibrational state no matter what is actually occurring in that experience. Nurturing, not necessarily just, mothering, though there is a great deal of that kind of level of divine nurturing activity going on here. Nurturing as in able to provide, very much in the same way that we have the cultivating nature of the divine ascended masculine, the highest vibrational environment in which any given thing will be able to have its best chance and highest potential. It is a unifying force that supports the raising of the vibrations of lower dimensional expressions and lower levels of consciousness into a higher state by unifying the lower with the higher, but doing it in a way that, of course, is actually going to serve. So instead of bringing the higher into the lower, we are bringing the lower into the higher. And that is a very powerful ascended divine feminine force. And so, of course, that would mean that the qualities of any creations of the divine ascended masculine and the divine ascended feminine in harmony would be expansive, evolving, radiant. They give love. They radiate the highest levels of energy. It gives love. It doesn't take love. These creations make everything around them a higher vibrational expression of themselves. These things raise the frequencies of all spaces, places, and experiences they touch, and they are prolific. There is always more to give, more to create. There is always something new. It is always a gift that keeps on giving, a creation that comes from a harmonized state of the divine ascended masculine and the feminine. Now, if there are occurrences where you are on your journey encountering maybe aspects of the toxic or distorted masculine within yourself or on the external, or the toxic or distorted feminine within yourself or on the external, it's important to remind yourself that the solution for the toxic masculine or the toxic feminine is not its proposed opposite. It is actually the higher vibrational expression of itself. So we meet the toxic masculine with the divine ascended masculine. We meet the toxic feminine with the divine ascended feminine. If I encounter, for instance, an aspect of myself that I find is co-creating or acting in a way that is coming from, say, the toxic lower masculine expression, then I will go into myself, introspect, self-examine, and embody the divine ascended masculine I am, right? Calling in all of my higher levels and then introducing that to the toxic lower masculine, and let it be transmuted, let it be cleared, let it be dissolved and purged in the light. The same thing applies for the feminine. Bring in the feminine of divine ascended aspect to deal with the toxic feminine. And this can also be something to keep in mind on the external, right? If there is a situation going on, perhaps, while on your journey, there's something going on in the external, right? We're all on our own journeys, but if someone, while on their journey, rolls up into your space, whatever that space is, and decides that they are going to present, confrontation or present distortion through a toxic masculine or toxic feminine trait, embody, right? Welcome in and forth your divine ascended self, your higher self, your multidimensional self, and then express the highest level that you can of your divine ascended masculine or your divine ascended feminine. And allow the experience of those energies, of those forces to be felt. And you will see that the toxic cannot abide that higher frequency. It will crumble, it will dissolve, it will clear. And it also offers an opportunity to the external to actually experience maybe a divine ascended frequency it has not been introduced to yet. Lastly, I'd like to offer some tools and some recommendations I have for when you are going through this part of your journey, because I found that these really do help with the balancing and integration and unification process in order to, of course, be able to embody these divine aspects of self and creator force. Sound therapy, while you are going through this, is fantastic. I recommend for both the divine ascended masculine and divine ascended feminine the high heart note or the high heart frequency that is an F sharp, middle F sharp, or high F sharp. So if you use singing bowls or you are listening to music, that is a great tone to have going on through your exercises, through your work. Solfeggio frequencies I recommend for this are 852 hertz, any combination of 852 hertz, 528 hertz. This helps bring things back into a divine order, but also do the reparative work that also will occur as the toxic lower distortions are cleared out, right, and transmuted into something else, into a more divine and vibrant expression. If you are looking to do any kind of clearing of family imprint work or cultural imprint work, 417 hertz is also fantastic for that, especially if you're trying to clear any kind of programs that may have been kind of instilled into you through any of these kinds of environments. If you are one who likes to work with colors or the cosmic rays, anything on the magenta spectrum is fantastic for the ascended divine masculine, and anything on the emerald spectrum is fantastic for the ascended divine feminine. Garnet and emerald are also excellent stones for the divine masculine and divine feminine respectively. Size does not matter, by the way, when it comes to stones. When it comes to crystals that you are bringing into your personal energy field and working within your aura, it does not have to be a massive crystal. It's just about introducing the vibration into your field so that you can work with it. Raw emerald itself is actually rather inexpensive. Again, size doesn't matter, whether it's this size or this size, they will both do the job for the ascended divine feminine. And the same thing with garnet, also relatively inexpensive. Of course, smaller specimens are always going to be more accessible and affordable, and again, they both do the same job. When meditating with colors or the cosmic rays, emerald ray or magenta ray, what you can do is you can actually visualize, a meeting or a conversation with a toxic masculine or toxic feminine aspect of self, and allow that visualization to be bathed in the respective light that would, of course, help it to raise in its own frequency. Sometimes you will see them transform into healthier iterations of themselves once all of the distortion is cleared. Sometimes you will see them get completely erased and consumed in that light. And then, say, if it were the toxic masculine and we were working with the magenta ray, you may find that a new divine masculine aspect is now being offered and brought into your fields and connecting and then becoming one with you. Or you may find the same with the feminine as well. Each individual experience and operation is going to vary. So that's what I've got for you guys. I hope you enjoyed it. If you think it'll help somebody, please like, share, and subscribe. I appreciate it. And I wish you all the most accelerated, supported, and expedient ascension and conscious evolution process possible. Love and blessings. I will see you all again soon.